What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest as we kick off yet another week here of the NBA offseason. We are now just 7 days away officially from Bulls training camp opening up at the Advocate Center. I cannot wait. It's about time for things to get rolling. We have a lot of exciting things ahead. The preseason officially kicks off October 7th in Cleveland against the Cavaliers. We're just a couple weeks away from that. Anyway, I wanted to start today's show by talking about Walker Kessler. It was just a few episodes ago. I talked about him as the Bulls, one of their primary targets to replace Nikola Vucevic. It's inevitable that whether Vuce moves on sooner rather than later, or if it's not until February at the deadline, Vuce will probably find a new home. His contract's coming to an end. He wants to play playoff basketball, meaningful minutes to close out his NBA career, and that could take place in the Western Conference with a few of the teams I profiled for him. At just 24 years old, Walker Kessler has emerged as one of the best interior defenders in the NBA. In his third season, Kessler averaged 11.1 points a game to go along with 12.2 rebounds a game and 2.5 blocks per game nearly, while shooting 66.3% from the field. On top of that, Kessler led the league with 4.6 offensive rebounds per game. Vuce is a great player and should receive some trade interest around February's deadline. Since he is on the final year of his deal, Chicago likely knows it's time to move on from him. A defensive anchor like Kessler would be a much better fit in Chicago's lineup alongside offensive-minded trio of guys like Josh Giddey, Kobe White, and Modest Buzelis. Have talked about this a bunch. I still stand by this. I think they do need a defensive anchor. I think Kessler, at his age, is a primary fit for what Billy Donovan wants to do. The Bulls front court does certainly need some help, even if they do not want to keep Vuce around post the 2025-26 season, and Kessler would be a great fit regardless. This balance of, rim protection that he provides and opportunistic scoring is exactly the kind of role player Chicago has lacked, and pairing Kessler with Vuce could also allow the Bulls to experiment with different front court combos depending on matchups. So either way, what I'm saying basically is whether the Bulls hang on to Vuce or not post this upcoming season, I obviously have anticipated the Bulls are going to move on from him dating back to May, so you know where I stand on it. But if he were to stick around, I think Kessler would be a very solid complement to a guy like Nikola Vucevic. This would not only be an investment in the present, but also in the future if you're the Bulls, as Kessler has the potential to be a defensive cornerstone for the next decade, honestly. I think this is a guy you got to take a long, hard look at if you're Chicago in the front office. So we'll see what happens there. Kind of switching gears to another topic of popularity in this show and a hot commodity when it comes to the Chicago Bulls, and that's Kobe White. I think that there is, and this is a very key figure to what the Bulls could decide to do with him moving forward, and that's kind of looking at the Boston Celtics and what they can get out of Anthony Simons before thinking about trading Kobe White. I think if you look at Boston, they're obviously looking to kind of retool that roster in the events of Jason Tatum kind of recovering and it being a bit of a trying year for them coming up. I think, when you look at Boston, they acquired Simons from Portland in a one-for-one swap for Drew Holiday as part of that franchise's, cost-cutting summer. The Boston Celtics also dumped Kristaps to Atlanta, as we all talked about, in exchange for an uninspiring return of George Niang, a 2031 second-round pick, in cash. They also let franchise legend Al Horford walk in free agency. Horford, like I've talked about, is expected to eventually land in Golden State, which could have been a landing spot for Vuce, as I talked about many times. But that transaction will reportedly happen once the Warriors work out their Jonathan Kuminga problem, another situation that could have a potential impact on Chicago, as I just talked about last week. So the more direct influence of the Bulls' next major decision will likely come if or when Boston deals Simons. I think, he's a player who is still trying to be shot. I think they're still trying to shop him to a certain degree. To be sure, the Celtics and Bulls are two franchises in dramatically different situations. Chicago is trying to climb out of play-in purgatory while Boston is attempting to hold onto its status as a title contender, and they're looking to kind of retool their roster to continue that prowess moving forward with the Jason Tatum injury and him recovering and all that. So when you look at Simons and White, they're relatively relatively similar as players. Both are combo guards capable of running the offense when necessary, but are more comfortable off the ball in a score-first role. Kobe White at 25 is coming off his best NBA season. He averaged 20.4 points a game, 3.7 rebounds a game, and 4.5 assists per game, while his shooting splits were solid. He drained a career best 584 threes this past season. And when you look at Anthony Simons, kind of stacking him up next to Kobe, at 26 years old, he saw a drop in production this last year, scoring 19.3 points a game, which is his lowest since the 2021-22 season when he played second fiddle to Dame in Portland. So, both players will be unrestricted free agents at the conclusion of this upcoming season. I just think it's very interesting and telling what Boston's going to do with this player, and it kind of hints forward to what the Bulls could look to do with a guy like Kobe White. Like now, I know two different situations, two different franchises that are in drastic, opposite parts of the spectrum right now when it comes to basketball, the competition and the competitiveness in the East. So we'll see what happens there. I would not be surprised though if Anthony Simons is shopped by the Boston Celtics, and we'll see what happens with their season coming up here. So kind of switching to a guy who I think is a very interesting player when it comes to the Chicago Bulls roster. That's Julian Phillips. I think the Bulls must continue to prioritize this guy. He's entering his third NBA season. He was drafted 35th overall in 2023, obviously. Through his first 2 years, he's posted very, minimal numbers at just 3.8 points a game to go along with just under 2 rebounds a game and just under half assists per game, shooting 44% from the field and 32.5% from beyond the arc there. It's far too early to write off this 21-year-old, though. His stats may not overwhelm anybody, but the Bulls were 5.2 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor. I think when you look at the analytics of this guy, he does provide value for this Bulls organization and this roster for Billy Donovan. For the second straight year, he ranked in the 81st percentile or higher in offensive efficiency differential. In this postseason, in this past season, Chicago's defense was better with Phillips on the court as well, and I think that was telling given what the Bulls are trying to use him as. And as a low usage off ball wing, Phillips' ceiling is naturally limited. Of course, when you're going to look at this guy still at 6'8", and athletic, but he's remarkably versatile. While he's too slight to defend the league's bigger forwards, full time he can competently defend 3 positions when needed. And I think that's a key when you look at what Billy Donovan can kind of switch this guy in and out of lineups in different combinations with this roster. Just looking at the big picture, though, the Bulls will soon be without several key players, including Kevin Huerter, who it's becoming increasingly likely he's going to hit free agency after this season. He's got a team option of just $2.4 million for 2026-27, and that's Julian Phillips, that is, that $2.4 million option coming up, not this year, but next year. He's all but guaranteed to remain in Chicago while other guys are going to leave. And we'll see what happens with Kobe. I think, Julian Phillips kind of ties directly to what the Bulls want to do with Kobe White. Now, I would not be surprised, like I've talked about, if the Bulls want to retain that trio. They already locked up Josh Giddey. Matas Buzelis is here, and he's a cornerstone of this team. Would not shock me if the Bulls want to bring back Kobe, but we'll see what Kobe wants to do. Does Kobe want to take a big payday somewhere else? If anything, I'm saying the Bulls have a solid option in Julian Phillips. I think he needs to be prioritized a little bit more to get him ready to make that leap into his role on this team and in the NBA. So just something to think about if you're a Bulls fan there. Wrapping up today's show, we had some it definitely relates to the Chicago Bulls in the Eastern Conference, but some big news on Miami Heat All-Star Tyler Hero. He underwent surgery on his left foot this past Friday, and he will be sidelined to start the upcoming season, and that's expected to be 8 weeks. His timeline will have to be, he's out approximately the first 12 games of the season in those 8 weeks. Hero dealt with an impingement in his left foot last season, which was bothering him for a large part of that year. Ultimately, though, Hero sustained an ankle injury during an offseason workout this offseason, which led to the decision to undergo surgery. So that's kind of a big blow for a Miami Heat team who's looking to gain its traction again. They made some moves, bringing in some some young players, obviously drafting Kasparis Yakochonis out of the University of Illinois. That's a solid young player. Norman Powell is a Miami Heat member now as well. So that team is definitely looking to retool and jump into contention again in the Eastern Conference. They certainly have had the Bulls number in the play-in tournament. But we'll watch to see how Tyler Hero recovers from that and see how that impacts the Eastern Conference moving into the start of this upcoming season. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me on this Monday edition of Bulls Latest. We are so close to Bulls basketball. I want to thank you guys for your support on the show. Hit that like and subscribe button. It goes a long way for the channel. I would really appreciate that from you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we will see you guys tomorrow.